ready, Bills Mafia? It's the Bills Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything Buffalo Bills, every week. Breaking down the big hits and game-changing plays the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. So gear up and squad up. The Bills Squad show starts now.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, host of Locked On Bills. We're live on Bills Squad, joined today by Jerry Ostroski, a former Buffalo Bills player, over 100-game starter, Tulsa Hall of Famer. Jeremy White is out today, but there's a very handsome man to the far right here, Greg Tompsett of Cover One. He's here to kick things off with us on Bills Squad. We're going to talk about the Bills salary cap position, which is pretty tight. But, you know, Greg's always got the answers. He's going to let us know where the Bills can get some cap space. James Cook, welcome to the NFL 100, and the NFL executives ranked him in the top 10. I got to see what Jerry has to say about that. Plus, I've got questions for Jerry about offensive line continuity. I got to pull some more stories out of this guy from his playing day, so I have some questions lined up. And we also want to get to your questions. If you have questions, fill up the chat. Let us know what's on your mind. I'd love to spend some time here to close, focusing in on what you want to talk about. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Jerry, what's up? It's me and you today. No Jeremy. How are you?
Man. I'm fired up. I get to talk to Greg today. I've never had that opportunity before. So, you know, the fact that he likes large humans, he fits in very, very well on this show. So I'm fired up. But appropriately, Gametime is the sponsor. The kids are going wild, folks. This afternoon, college football gets released on EA Sports. So, yeah, this is a big day for Gametime in the gamer world as NCAA gets released today.
You play the sticks, Jerry? You got a game box?
Jerry Oda, the only sticks I play are on the golf course. I don't play video games, man.
That used to be like a PTO day for me. That used to be like a scheduled day off. The release of college football and the release of Madden, I would like take that day off of work at one point in life.
Yeah, I was big on that too. Franchise mode, had to get it going, had to like have the all-time leading player at every position, and I hadn't played Madden since Peyton Hillis was on the cover, so it's been a few minutes.
No, we're about the same. We're about the same window.
Amazingly enough, I have a son that got paid to be in the game. So, you know, not much, but it'll get him a couple of beers and a couple dozen wings at the local brew pub. But yeah,
Jerry, you were in Madden back in the day. Did you play? Did you check out your ratings? What was your
no? I mean, I looked at it, but it was so pixelated back then. It was, you know.
You say that
offensive linemen look like Cartman across the board.
You say that, but at the time, I thought this is never going to be any better than this. This is the pinnacle, right? And then it.
I just was I was never a gamer, man. Never a gamer. But it was cool to be in the game.
Well, Greg Tompsett, not only a large human enthusiast, he's a salary cap enthusiast, which I'm very thankful for because I have a lot of questions and I ask him a lot of questions. And today I'm going to ask the questions I normally just send him a text message about and broadcast those for everyone else to get into. So, Greg, thanks for being here. Thanks for giving us some of your time. I want to talk a lot of different things, but I want to start with this. TJ Sanders is the Bills' second-round pick. He's the only pick for the Bills that is unsigned. Now, he's not the only second-round pick across the league that's unsigned. There's 30 of those. Yeah. So we've kind of hinted at this a little bit on this show about what's going on with these second-round picks. I want to hear it from you, and then just ultimately, like, who's going to budge, and when are these guys going to get signed?
So obviously, like you said, and like you guys talked about previously, there is something going on. It's not a TJ Sanders Bills thing at all. It's the 30 of the 32 second-round picks are not signed. This goes back to a trend that's been increasing over the last couple of years. You go back 2 years ago, Joey Porter Jr. was the first pick of the second round. He got about 70% of his fourth-year contract guaranteed. This is something where all the first-round picks get all 4 years guaranteed. Everybody else, it decreases. You get your signing bonus guaranteed and then a portion of the first years. And they've been pushing that envelope in the second round. So Joey Porter Jr. was the first pick 2 years ago. He got 70% of his fourth year guaranteed. Last year, the Bills, by trading down, Keon Coleman was the first pick of the second round. They actually guaranteed 80% of his fourth year salary. So that has been inching its way up. Well, this year, the Houston Texans and the Cleveland Browns, the Texans actually went first. they guaranteed all of Jaden Higgins' contract. So it became a new thing. The Browns came in after the fact with Corey Swessinger and guaranteed all of his. So now the first 2 picks all have all of their contract guaranteed. So the NFLPA is basically using Tyler Shuck and his quarterback leverage of like, hey, you guys can't afford to mess around with this. We just all saw Derek Carr retire. He's going to be your starting quarterback. You have to guarantee his. And now you're talking about a guy 41 picks into the draft, 8, 5, 6 guys after Jaden Higgins. So all the rest of the guys, like the 5 guys in between and like the 10 guys afterwards, are all holding the line, being like, well, if he's going to get guaranteed, I want to guarantee. And the Bills just happen to be the next pick after Tyler Shuck with Sanders. So I have a feeling this is going to work its way out. To be honest, I think this is a bit of ado about nothing. There's not a ton of guys that get cut that early from second round picks. And you're also talking about the signing bonus is the bigger chunk of money, which is already guaranteed. The first 3 years are already guaranteed. And like 60% versus 70 versus 80 to 100% of that fourth year, it's all principal. The amount of money you're talking about is the difference of $50,000 there, $100,000 there. It's not going to cripple anything. It's the principle of the owners versus the NFLPA. We can all get, historically that's gone the owner's way pretty consistently. I think this is one where I think a lot of the other owners aren't super happy with the Texans for jumping ahead of that and guaranteeing Jaden Higgins' contract, but they'll have to deal with that on their own. And I think this is a relatively negligible fighting point, but the owners don't like to lose any battles in this stuff. They want it to be a point of contention or something they can negotiate with in the next CBA. So I'm sure they'd love to kick that can down the road. That's a long ways off. I think this will be resolved relatively soon. All the teams want their player to show up for camp. I think TJ Sanders will sign as soon as any of the other second round picks sign. I'm not aware of any concern for that, but that's what's going on here. We're all watching Tyler Shuck down in New Orleans.
Setting precedent in the NFL with contracts is always a big deal, and we're sorting through that right now. Let's get into the Bills' current cap position, where things are pretty tight. So, Greg, how tight is the cap? And obviously, that's one thing. What's the reality of the opportunities that exist for the Bills to get some cap space?
Yeah, so obviously, whether you look at the public sites like Over the Cap or Spot Track or the NFLPA actual resource, we're somewhere plus minus $100,000. We don't have any space. We don't have any room. I think in theory right now we technically couldn't sign TJ Sanders without doing another corresponding move, and obviously can't function within the season. And I think one of the biggest windows that fans don't connect with is cut down day involves a lot of dead cap space, a lot of small ones, not huge ones, but we're about to release 37 players to get down from 90 to 53. Almost all of them, I would say more than half of them, have some money committed to that, where maybe a UDFA that got given a bonus, or somebody who is a borderline guy that we might talk about in a moment, all have dead cap space. That takes up a chunk. And then Brandon Beane said before, he likes to have 5 to 10 million for in-season to be able to make in-season moves. I think it'd be hard to get to 10 million, but at least 5 to be able to function for practice squad call-ups, additions to the roster when you put somebody on IR, or a bigger move like a trade in season or something like that. When you look at those numbers here, there aren't a ton of levers to pull, just because we already did a lot of those. The easy ones like Ed Oliver's and things like that, we've already done. One that I expected that hasn't happened yet was a Connor McGovern extension. I now am kind of wondering, are we going to go into the season to see how that goes? Maybe they have more confidence in Cedric Van Pran-Granger stepping in. Maybe we let McGovern and Edwards walk and bring in Alec Anderson. Like Edwards went from sixth, jumbo guy to starting guard, and Van Pran-Granger comes in. I don't know that piece, but that was a chunk that I had kind of earmarked that, that'll just be a formality. They'll do that. They haven't done that. So there's 2 of them that I see as the levers that would get pulled to create cap space. The one is an absolute formality. Deion Dawkins, if you restructure his deal and just kick the salary down the road, it's an $11 million base salary. It's $9.8 million in cap space. It checks every box we just talked through. It allows them to sign the TJ Sanders, any other late moves. There's always the mercenary pass rusher of the year, whatever, all the guys who wait until camp. There's a fair amount of big names still sitting out there. If they want to grab one of those guys, they could. And then cut down day and in season, he checks every box. They'd be able to do that. I'll throw one other name out there. I think a name that people had been holding their nose of like, oh, we just have to wait until we can cut him. And I've seen, thankfully, a fair amount of fans come around on. Is there really any risk in restructuring Dawson Knox? Like, is there any actual chance he's not going to be on this team
He's a Bill
going
for
forward?
Life.
He's an incredibly valuable part of this roster. So those are the guys I look for. Ed Oliver was the easiest one they already did. Spencer Brown was an easy one they already did. Guys who, pre-show, my question was, what are the actual odds they cut Deion Dawkins in the next 2 years?
Right.
It's zero. Like, it's not going to happen. Even with an injury, a catastrophic injury, they're going to let him rehab it and see if he can come back. So those are just moving pieces, kicking cans down the road. I don't actually expect Dawson Knox to happen, but it's absolutely feasible to them. But Dawkins alone gives them enough space to make this work.
With Knox, I think he's got a $17 million cap hit next year. I think that the Bills are going to extend Dawson Knox and reduce that. Dawson Knox is not going anywhere. I actually have an episode coming up later this week that gets into that. And actually tomorrow, I pre-recorded some episodes, so I really don't know what day it is. So let's get further into this, Greg. You talked about some restructure levers. Deion Dawkins feels really, really obvious. There's two players that I think Bills Mafia has some questions about that could create some cap space, but not if they cut him. Only if they trade him. Those players, right. A.J. Epinesa on defense, Curtis Samuel on offense. Do you think these are viable options for the Bills to consider? Like if they could do a pick swap and a player to get the cap space, some hard decisions will be made on this roster. Those guys could be opening doors for other players to get in the mix here.
And maybe elaborate a little more on the Epinesa piece. If Michael Hoyt was available now, day one, is Epinesa already gone?
So that last piece is a really interesting one, because as that signing for Michael Hoyt happened, obviously we know some of the hubbub about the suspension and not knowing that at the time of pursuit. Maybe they found it out during the negotiation, but as they were prepping for their free agency from a target standpoint, that wasn't there. Obviously, a guy you signed for a 3-year deal, that 6-game initial buffer was not going to be a factor per se. But they didn't know the draft. So the fact that a guy as talented as Landon Jackson, who has a fair amount of skill set overlap to an AJ Epinesa, not knowing that he was going to be on the board as you signed Michael Hoyt, I think that's a great question, Jerry, to look at. Would that have already taken place? I think that would have increased the likelihood at a very minimum. And I think it would have gone over 50-50 to where I would have guessed, yeah, I probably would have been moved by now. So now you look at that with Landon Jackson, a limited window that we've seen with Javon Solomon, but some encouraging signs, his ability to play special teams, how, like we just saw Brian Baldinger did a really nice breakdown praising the potential for Landon Jackson, along with obviously Groot, Joey Bosa, all the other guys that are there. I think that is an uphill climb for AJ, but he's also over that threshold of, he'd be unemployed for 15 minutes. He'd have a list of options available to him. Well, Brandon Beane knows that too. So he is, I think, number one on that list of cut down day candidates, maybe even in training camp. If they see the first 2 weeks of camp are going and like, oh crap, we got something in this Landon Jackson kid, we want to get him on the field. Javon Solomon took a step forward in year 2. He can get a jersey on game day because of special teams. I think you could even see it before cut down day, just out of respect to AJ, to be like, hey, get in here with your new team, go earn yourself some reps and some snaps. We wish you all the best and we move forward. I think I just rattled off 3 other guys that come into play for him. I don't know that there's 3 other guys for Curtis Samuel, but signing Elijah Moore, there's a bit of overlap there in what those two do. And one's cheaper, younger, has been on the field a bit more.
Yeah.
I do think there's a possibility there. I will say my gut says there's a greater market for AJ Epinesa than there is for Curtis Samuel. He's a guy that I kind of think teams might call their bluff and dare them to cut him before they traded an asset for that. And the contract's not terrible to take on, but you're still taking on a $6.9 million salary. I don't see any scenario right now that if you released him, he'd get that number. So my guess is I'd be pleasantly surprised. We've been surprised before. I'd be pleasantly surprised if Brandon Beane found a market for that contract in the short term, but I do agree that I don't know that it would be out of the question if somebody made an offer.
Let me ask you this. We do 53-man roster projections, but one thing that we don't always think enough about are the contracts for bubble players that just make them hard to move on from based on the structure of the guaranteed money. Are there any players this year, when you look at that, like bubble players that have a story to tell based on their contract structure that's going to make them tougher to bump? I know like a guy like Damar Hamlin in particular,
Right.
is his $2 million fully guaranteed. Any situations like that?
So I mean, obviously that's one. Is Damar Hamlin is basically fully guaranteed in what they do. I will say, for any fans who are, assuming that Elijah Moore is on the bubble, they guaranteed more of his money than they did Damar Hamlin's money. Like, his deal was basically $2.5 million guaranteed. Like, I don't know that makes him a roster lock, because Lyle Collins had a similar number last year and we cut him. So I do think there are factors that can come into play where they'll eat that money because they need the roster spot more than the player. But I would say those are two at the lower end that stick out, where that is going to be a factor in what they do. And I'll use someone on the other side of that people probably would have lumped into that group. As an example, Dane Jackson doesn't have as much guaranteed. Like, that is one where he was actually guaranteed, oddly, it's the exact same dollar figure as what you get in the new higher floor veteran level of the practice squad. So, like, basically committing to him that, hey, you're going to get that money no matter what. If you're in the roster spot, God bless you, you get the more money, but we'll guarantee you that money all year long, that you're going to be with us if you want to stick around the roster. At the top end, by far the highest is Curtis Samuel. If Curtis Samuel's number didn't have that guarantee next to it, he would probably lead my list of bubble candidates. I don't know that I see them eating that where it's like $8.6 million in dead money, zero savings, and that's with kicking money into next year. I don't see any scenario where I see them eating that. It's $12 million in dead cap. You're kicking $4 more million into next year just to get rid of him. So I don't see that as a scenario. But the one that I could see is Daquan Jones. I like Daquan a lot. Like, he obviously had that amazing flash before his injury. Wasn't quite the same when they came back, but had some flashes again. We don't have a stereotypical one tech on the roster. We have like a Jordan Phillips 2.0 in in Deion Walker, and then going through the other guys who can maybe rotate in there and play some snaps, or a development of a Zion Logue or something like that. TJ Sanders being better movement skills, but not as big. I do think that he makes sense on this roster, but you're also talking about a big number, and that it's something where, cutting him beforehand didn't make sense. You didn't know how the draft was going to go, so you weren't going to eat $7.6 million. But now, if you were to cut him at cutdown day or to make a trade, it's $5.5 million in cap savings now to be able to trade it or to cut him. And if you traded him, $7.7 million. Again, I don't love the idea of literally not having a traditional one tech on the roster.
Right.
But I've had to accept the fact I've seen the team invest over and over and over again in what they see as their body types that they want and their skill set that they look for. And I just have to accept that that's what they want out of this group. So he'd be my maybe surprise name that would come up, but the numbers do net out that I could see it.
Real quick, I have one quick question on a camp battle that Bills Mafia has deemed this thing. Jordan Hancock seems to be the heir apparent to everything, and we haven't even been on the field yet, right? So does Cam Lewis have guaranteed numbers that would maybe make that move a little bit harder? Because we've seen where, Jordan Hancock's going to come in, take over the Cam Lewis role, backup corner, safety, all that. What do Lewis's numbers look like, and would that prevent maybe that from happening, considering the Hancock's a later round guy and could probably put him on the practice squad?
Same idea as our Dane Jackson discussion, not that much.
Okay.
So it would only be $212,000 in dead money. They would save $1.7 million. So he very much is fighting for that roster spot. It was basically like a $350,000 bonus that was already paid out that would be split between the 2 years with a little bit of some workout guarantees. And I would say another name that comes up in that space is obviously Jamarcus Ingram. And he's a guy that has even less than Cam Lewis. So Cam Lewis has a little bit more assurance, but Damar Hamlin and Elijah Moore are fully guaranteed. It's only $2 million, so it's not a number that guarantees a roster lock, but tells you that the team's intention at the time of signing was, they're going to be on the roster. Guys like Cam Lewis, Dane Jackson, Jamarcus Ingram, they certainly hedged in how they structured that to where, hey, here's a little bit of money out of respect for what we're doing, but if you get cut, we're not out the money. We're okay with that. So there's no financial impact of Cam Lewis, Jamarcus Ingram, or Dane Jackson that's going to be the reason they do or don't make that roster. If a guy like Hancock or Virginia Check 6th round strong. Thank you. It's going to make me crazy. If those guys win the battle, they win the battle. Like, that's just, traditionally 6th round picks aren't guaranteed. Like, they're higher likelihood, but not guaranteed. This one, there's no financial impact in place. If Strong beats out Jackson, if Hancock beats out Ingram or Lewis or wherever you put Ingram in that setting, I would say out of those 5 names, 3 of them are going to make the roster and 2 aren't. And, most fans think the rookies are for sure going to be the ones that make it. So if that's the case, that's 2 veterans that we've seen on this roster the last while, that 2 of them might be, for us, priority practice squad ones, but also names that I could see being given a roster spot somewhere around the league.
It's a competitive roster. Exciting to see this all shake out in the
more than last year. More than last year.
I 100% agree with that. Greg, thanks for hopping on with us, man. A little Monday.
Appreciate it. Jared, it's nice to finally be on with you. Joe, always a pleasure, and really enjoying what you guys are doing here with the Bill Squad. This is a fantastic show. Really encourage everybody to keep watching. This has been a ton of fun to see you guys put together.
Thank you, Greg. Make sure you guys are following Greg over at Cover One, the Cover One Buffalo podcast. All right, coming up next, James Cook in the top 100 for the NFL, top 10 back according to the NFL executives. We're going to break that down and a whole lot more, so folks, be sure to stick with us. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you could save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Ever wonder what your view will actually look like before you buy? The app shows you a panoramic seat view, so there are no surprises. And speaking of no surprises, with Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Jerry, we got to talk James Cook. I didn't think this was going to happen today, but just before we went live, 2 James Cook things came up. First of all, the NFL 100, the players list, has James Cook ranked number 89. So he cracks the top 100. And the ESPN story that Jeremy Fowler does every year, where he polls NFL executives, coaches, scouts, they did their top 10 running backs, and James Cook came in at number 8. And so, Jerry, your initial reaction to Cook's landing in the top 10 for the execs and the top 100 for the players?
I mean, it's right where he should be. He should be a top 10 guy. Number 8 puts him, in very good company. Not like he's in the top 3 or 4, but he's in the top 10. He's in the top 100 for the NFL list. Not in the top 25 or top 50. He's 89, which is admirable. It's commendable. But it's exactly kind of, it's proof of what we've all felt. And I'm going to read a comment from an AFC exec. He says he's perfect for their offense with a quarterback that spreads things out. He's good in the passing game, catches the ball really well, good in open space. Here's the comment. Not sure he's elite yet, but he's really, really good. What about this is any different than what we've been saying for the last 3 to 4 months?
Yes, exactly. And then if you continue reading Fowler's comments, he says he's averaging 222 carries per season as a starter, and some teams are curious about he would hold up as a 300 carry number 1 back at 5'11", 190. This is what we've been talking about for months.
Right.
either way, he's earned league-wide respect at a time when he's seeking a contract extension from Buffalo. I 100% agree that he's a top 10 NFL running back. No exception there. And this is the way that they stack from Fowler's article. Saquon Barkley, number 1. Derrick Henry, number 2. Jahmyr Gibbs, number 3. Bijan Robinson, number 4. I'll be honest with you. I think that's exactly how I would stack the top 4. Then it's Christian McCaffrey, who's difficult to deal with at number 5 because of the injuries. If he's healthy, he's really good. But I mean, come on now. This is getting concerning. Josh Jacobs at 6. Jonathan Taylor at 7. And then here's James Cook at 8, with number 9 being Joe Mixon, number 10 being Alvin Kamara. I think this is a pretty good list in terms of what's representative of the reality of how I see the backs in the NFL. Here's where it's complicated. The ones that get paid $15 million a season are the ones that are higher on the list.
Right.
Now, you pay for future production.
Right.
But I don't know that this is like there it is. There's the validation that you need to give him the money that he's looking for. I think, if anything, it further confirms that he's a really, really good player. But the things that everyone else is now talking about seems to be lining up with what we've been talking about, which makes that contract conversation complicated.
Right. And I think that James Cook has to look at this situation. We know he's a good player. Is his skill set being maximized in Buffalo because of what they do? And if he goes to another team, are they going to do the same things to maximize his skill set? Another comment from the NFLPA Top 100 list is that Cook ran to the weak side 54.6% of his carries in 2024, highest rate in the league. He had a 1.7 yard before contact rate on the weak side, 1.0 yards before contact on the strong side. What does that mean in layman's terms? He's a hell of his own runner. He runs really well behind this line and what we do. We're very more lateral than vertical. He's patient, puts his foot in the ground, can hop behind centers and backside guards, and that's where he makes his living. Again, I think the Bills utilize James Cook exactly to what his skill set is. And there's, the comment made in this article, and it shows that there's some hesitation across the league, is his body type and what he does, will he do these same things when you really put a big-time workload upon him? And I think this all goes into the theory of what Beane is doing and slow playing this, besides the fact that he has all negotiation pieces, is exactly what he should be doing. And me, anyway, as a player, as a former player, comfortability in a program, knowing what the offense is, knowing they do what I do best, I would sacrifice a couple million a year to stay in that situation, knowing at the end, the long game, I'll probably play longer in the league because they're taking care of me more than if I go somewhere else and I start getting the ball 300, 350 times a season. And I think that he really has to look at that.
Jerry, how do you take this comment from the AFC executive that you read about how he's perfect for that offense with the quarterback that spreads things out? I'm very much of the belief that James Cook is 100% optimized in Buffalo. Do you see him as a player that can still be the same level of production and impact somewhere else? Or do you think Buffalo truly is the place where he's going to play his best ball?
Well, I think he can, but they're going to have to tweak things for him. We all know his deficiency, his number one deficiency, besides size and, perceived maybe being able to handle a heavy workload because of durability. The other thing being his pass protection. And there's not many teams in the NFL. I was thinking about this the other day, Joe. We always talk about, we make a joke out of the 5-man protection thing in Buffalo that no matter what the other team does, Josh will figure it out, right? I was trying to think of another team that did something similar. And the only team I could come back to is the greatest show on turf in St. Louis when Kurt Warner was there. And I don't think Kurt Warner gets enough credit for the type of quarterback he was. He got blasted because they never kept anybody in to help him. And they brought the house, and he got blasted and held on to the ball to the last minute. So I think maybe that's the only other team that I could think of, like when Marshall Faulk was there was a kind of offense that the Bills are running with this, the way they run protections. And no, you're going to have to really make a pointed effort to tweak what you do to really get the most out of James Cook. So again, I get it. You want to make as much. There's two sides of the story. Make as much as you can and get out, or are we playing the long game? I always look at the long game, and I think that Cook would benefit from staying in Buffalo because I think he plays more seasons and he makes more money because he's a longer-term guy. That's the way I look at it.
And I think that is something that Brandon Beane knows that, and I think the rest of the NFL knows. I'm sure that Brandon Beane has an appetite to say to James Cook, okay, if you're seeking that money, go get it. And if not, this deal's waiting for you. I think Beane at this point in time, obviously we need to learn what happens in 2025. I think right now that's a perfectly good position for him to be in, because I'd be willing to either live with James Cook going and getting that money from somebody else, or letting him find out that it's not there and saying, here it is. Here's the reasonable contract.
Well, unfortunately, Joe, and we've talked about it on the show multiple times. Unfortunately, and the sickening thing about it is probably the place he fits as good as Buffalo would be Kansas City. I mean, the opportunity to get out of the backfield in the passing game, the opportunity to run against light boxes, that's probably a place that he would go. And if he's able to test the waters, maybe KC's that place. Now, they have not been historically known, I don't believe, to pay big money for running backs. You look at their backs they've had, Pacheco and the likes. It's not like they're just going out and getting a bunch of high-profile running backs. They feel that they can do a lot with maybe that fringe guy. So they'd have to maybe come off of theory a little bit payment-wise to get a guy like Cook. But no, I mean, I'm with you. The one thing that I want to see, and you talked about it last time we were on, if you're going to go ahead and really buy all in and we're James Cook heavy and this is what we do, I would like to see him utilized more in the passing game and get him out of the backfield running routes again, and more so like his first season than his second season.
Yeah, definitely some meat on the bone in that capacity. And I think his passing down snaps went down by like almost 20% year over year, which I think has more to do with Ty Johnson than it does James Cook. But what James Cook does himself that complicates that formula is that if it's end of half 2 minute and they need the back to stay in the block, they don't trust him, and they shouldn't.
Right. But also this, let's look at this aspect. Who has one of the best rates, if not the best rate against the blitz in the league?
It's
Josh Allen.
Yeah.
So really in retrospect, if you put him out there on third down, a lot of times the Bills don't care, get him out in routes because they're not really worried about it anyway. Because they've got Superman back there making plays in the blitz. So I don't know, man. It's hard for me. And I know when you start talking players, there's this big, it's almost like a respect factor. Okay. If I get paid, that's a form of respect, right? It's a form of respect. And I don't know. I never looked at it that way. And maybe it's because of the journey that I had. When I found a team that was willing to accept me for who I was and take me in and pay me and give me an opportunity, which eventually throughout the years became Buffalo, I had chances to leave and I didn't because I had a loyalty to them because they gave me that chance. So, I know that's not the way that every player looks at these situations, but if I was James Cook, I'd be figuring out long and hard a way to stay in Buffalo because I think it optimizes his career as an NFL running back.
I tend to agree with you. And like you said, priorities can be different for everybody. And we'll see what's most important for James Cook here within the next few months. All right. You mentioned your career. I want to ask you some questions about your career, specifically about some offensive line continuity stuff and maybe some more specific big events that happened during your time with the Buffalo Bills. So we're doing that and a whole lot more. Folks, be sure to stick with us. It's Bill Squad live here on the Locked On Bills YouTube channel. Make sure that you hit that like button, follow, subscribe. We're also on the audio feeds as well once we get done here with the live episode. No Jeremy White today, but Joe Marino, I'm here. Jerry Ostroski is here. And one of the storylines for the Bills offense this year, the offensive line in particular, is that the top 9 guys are all back. your starting five, your top four primary backups. And I don't know if that ever happened in your career. I do know that there were times where the primary starter from every position was back in the same spot. But can you speak to the benefit of offensive line continuity, and maybe even give us like a specific example where your experience playing next to certain players led to a result that you would say, hey, the reason that we were able to pull that off is because we were a unit that has a lot of continuity?
Well, I think I'll give you an example of that. So we're playing in New York, and I was playing center at the time. Billy Connolly was on the team. We had an injury at right guard. Billy had to come in at right guard, and he was kind of a swing guy, center guard. And then I even hate to tell the story, but sometimes in the game, I went to make a cut on a linebacker. I think it was Marvin Lewis, got kneed in the side of the head and was knocked half loopy, right? Billy was able to make the calls the rest of the game at center, at guard, for me at center. Basically, I knew when to snap it and knew where to go. And, Billy made calls. And so that continuity of having multiple position knowledge was really, really helpful that day. But yeah, I think that the Bills do a wonderful job, not only in their continuity, but also the way that Cromer multi-position trains players. You've got Van Pran Granger playing guard and center. You got Alex Anderson playing guard and center. You got guys that are playing tackle and guard. And when you have that ability, when you got five solid starters and guys that have been durable, not missing many games, and then you've got guys behind them that you rely on and cross-train them at positions, now you've got the ability to move guys around to where, beforehand it was always, well, if the center goes down, we're going to take the left guard, move him to center, then we got to bring this back up in. You're moving three pieces to fix one. Whereas now in Buffalo, if one goes down, we've only got to move one. We can bring a guy in off the bench and be real comfortable with him. So, yeah, I think that continuity is big. Obviously verbiage and the way guys talk and communicate, all those things are basically status quo in Buffalo, and they've reaped the benefits of being able to have that group out there all the time, because what it really does is allow you to build that backup group.
Let me ask you this. I mean, during your time with the Bills, you blocked for a lot of different running backs: Thurman Thomas, Antoine Smith, Jonathan Linton. Did you get Sammy Morris in there? I mean, you had a lot of different guys that you blocked for. How did the offense change based on the different backs? Did you have different runs and schemes that were tailored more for certain backs? And was that part of the conversations with the design of the run scheme?
Yeah, definitely. I think that one of the things that you learned as an offensive lineman was your style of blocking. You might have tweaked things according to who was running the ball. Some guys were real patient, like James Cook type runners. That was Thurman. Thurman could take it front side immediately if he had to, but you knew if you're a backside guard and you had an inside shade, okay, or a shade nose, you had to bust your butt to get inside and get hands on that guy and run him down the line of scrimmage, because most of the time, like Cook, Thurman was going to put his foot in the ground and hop back behind you. Where when Antoine Smith ran the ball, you were much more, you needed to get hands on them and cover guys up so that they couldn't get off the block quick because he was downhill. So maybe you didn't have to sustain that block as long because they were more of a one cut and go type back. And, Antoine was that way. I mean, he wasn't the greatest of counter runners because he wasn't as patient, where Thurman would sell counter for days. I mean, counters and power. I mean, he just had the ability to do that and was so much patient, where Antoine got the ball. And a lot of times he would get out there almost before the trapper did. So that's kind of how you did things a little differently. Maybe one guy you knew that you had to lock on and run with longer, and you didn't come off that block because it wasn't like you had to put him on his back. You had to occupy him longer. The other guys, especially second level, Joe, you had to make your step and get up to second level and cover that linebacker up. Wasn't like you're getting a kill shot, but you wanted to cover him up down the middle so that Antoine had two ways to go, because running backs are amazing. They see different color, they're going to run away from it. So, I knew when I was climbing to the linebacker, it wasn't like if we were running right, I had to get to the right shoulder and get that turned. You wanted to make sure you're down the middle and cover that jersey color up of the other team. So then that way Antoine could go right or left. And it was much more of a quicker type deal. So, yeah, you do learn from who's in the backfield, maybe just how you need to sustain blocks and angles and all of that kind of that goes hand in hand with the style that they run the ball. Does that
I'm
make
sure,
sense?
yeah, and I'm sure there's a very practical application stylistically with the Bills right now with James Cook and
Right.
Ray Davis, very different runners, and just a little inventory that the players have to have in their mind based on who's in the game and how they should attack the front and create those
Well,
angles.
I think you see it like up front. Like I'll use Osiris Torrance for an example. A lot of times, Torrance will have some issues with real quick guys right off the bat, and maybe get beat right off the bat. And with Cook being so patient, you don't have to. There's really no. It's not a kill shot type block. You got to make sure you sustain them and then run your feet. And you look at the way the Cromer's built this group up front. They are very lateral. They run really well, and which sets up for what James does. You lock on, you run, and then he comes back behind it. So that's why, I'm excited about a guy like Jackson Halls. You can put him on the backside where you put Alec Anderson. That's why that Alec Anderson jumbo package works so well, because he's able to collapse the backside.
Yeah.
And Cook is able to hang, then get behind Anderson.
Let me ask you this, because I know you watch a lot of the Bills run scheme, all 22. I do, of course. And I feel like if there's a common theme of Bills runs that don't have success that you're looking for, a lot of times it is that 3-tech, and it's the backside 3. And it doesn't feel like they have like a good plan always to take care of that. Sometimes you'll see the guard release to the second level and doesn't really help the tackle get around. And so they're able to kind of get lateral pursuit and make the play, or, just whatever it is, like the timing element of taking care of that backside cutoff on the 3. Do you see this too? Is there anything to it in your mind that can fix that?
Yeah. That's the weak spot of a lateral movement zone scheme, is the backside 3 technique, because the guard's not helping the tackle by setting the block.
But should you at least like drag hand that or something? Or
I believe so. What we used to do is when we had, especially if the line, and it kind of is all predicated, Joe, about where that linebacker position is. And if that linebacker's over top of you, you've got a little more time. If he's backside, you got a ton of time. When I say backside, if I'm a left guard, and we've got a 3 technique on my left shoulder, I'm talking about, say, that linebacker's over the 3 technique, or maybe even a little bit behind him to the left. So you have to have patience. Now, if that linebacker's inside of you, like lined up in what we would call a 20 or a 10 position, which is inside gap of the left guard, you don't have as much time. You've got to go. But the thing about the lateral movement game that is really the weak spot is that backside 3. And what the guards got to do is they got to slow down. You almost have to take a jab step with your right foot to set your hips, and then post with that outside hand through the 3 and use his momentum. So it's almost like a push off. So I know it's hard to do this on TV, on a computer, but you're going to take that jab step, and you're going to go through that inside shoulder of that defensive tackle with your hand, and almost push yourself off to get momentum up to that linebacker. Does that make sense? So you're doing 2 things. You're gaining momentum, but you're posting the 3 technique so that tackle can get over and get him. Where you get trouble is the guard leaves. There's no help for that 3 technique. And what is the biggest thing with football nowadays? If my back lines up, so if we're going to run outside, we're going to run to the right, where's my back line up? If we're not in pistol, he lines up to the left, right?
Yeah.
Well, what do most defense coordinators do?
Yeah.
They slant away from the guy, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm not posting that 3 technique, he's already slanting. It's a hard enough block as it is if he doesn't slant. And now he's slanting, and the tackle's in sneaking no man's land. So the only thing I can tell the tackle is almost pull, open up, and run and try to cut the guy, is what we would do. I mean, we would almost run a path like we're going to run counter to the right and open up and just pull, and know that about your 3rd step, you're either going to get to him, or your 3rd step, you're going to cut him. And you don't have to get him even on the ground. Just tie him up to where he's not a free runner.
Getting to those landmarks, it can be tough, right? Especially for that guard. I probably didn't think enough about, hey, that guard's got somewhere he's got to get to.
Right. And it's all predicated upon the linebacker's alignment, and because his job's to get the backer. But I think the biggest thing we have a problem with in young players And it's the one thing, I work with young linemen is we used to use the term all the time, situational awareness. I should know by alignment and the play called before the snap is even made, what is my doomsday scenario?
Mm-hmm.
Where is the one place I cannot get beat? And, a lot of times these backside tackles just got to understand, like, hey, especially Dion, he messes around and Spencer does it too. They're in 2-point stances enough to where if I'm on the backside of a zone and I know I've got that tough, I'm in a 2-point. I'm just going to drop and run and just try to cut them or tie them up.
Yeah. All right. Coming up next, I want to ask Jerry a question about Sam Gash and a couple other things from his playing days.
Big Cuz. That's my man, Big Cuz.
Stick with us. Joe Marino, Jerry Ostroski, Bill's squad. He's just Sam Gash to me. I'm not tight with him like you are, but I know that you overlapped with Sam Gash for a couple of years. I know he's a fan favorite. And I want to bring this up for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'd love to gain an appreciation from your perspective on how Sam Gash benefited the Bills offense, but also when you consider structurally how this Bills rushing offense executes, do you think they could benefit from maybe a little bit more utilization of Reggie Gilliam in a lead blocking role?
I would think Sam Gash is probably, biggest. When you think fullback, you think of a hammer, and Sam was the ultimate hammer. I got to see Sam about 3 or 4 years ago. I hadn't seen him in a while. His kids are now recruitable players, and his son was being recruited by Drake, where my son was coaching at the time. Was at a game, and Sam was there, so got to see Sam. Sam was known as Big Cuz because that's what he called everybody, Big Cuz. Played at Penn State, was your typical Penn State fullback. Sam Gash made all of his money playing against the Buffalo Bills 3-4 defense back in the day, because I don't know if you remember when we played New England and Sam was in New England, if it was 3rd and whatever, they never accounted for Sam. Sam caught more balls in the flat against the Buffalo Bills than any other team in the league.
Right.
And then he ends up in Buffalo and had that same ability. I think the thing that fullbacks do nowadays, if you can really utilize them properly anyway in today's offenses, are guys like Sam can catch the ball in the backfield because you can do so much with them in play action and those types of things. No, I'd have no problem with Reggie Gilliam playing, especially if Reggie can prove to be that really proven pass catcher and be able to catch some stuff in the flat and things like that on 3rd down. It's just we're in love with this jumbo package, right, Joe?
Mm-hmm.
What is it? It's just another dude that's doing the job of a fullback. I mean, it might be an extra offensive lineman, it might be an H, it might be a Y, it might be an actual fullback. It's all the same, and I like players that are multifaceted, you get more out of. But no, I think a fullback in this offense would be great. I mean, because it's so funny. I think the biggest misconception about the Bills, Joe, is we're this pass it spread type team. And I don't think we can be more further from that than anything. I don't think we're that. We don't live in 4 wides.
Right.
We don't live in, a bunch of crazy spread type stuff. I mean, so I think a fullback would be awesome. Sam's one of my favorite players of all time. It really is. He was an unbelievable teammate.
You mentioned him catching passes against the Bills, which provoked me to look something up just now. Sam Gash, in his 12-year career,
right,
he caught a total of 169 passes.
Thank you.
21 against the Buffalo Bills. So 12% of this man's career receptions came against the Bills, who only accounted for 6% of the total games that he played.
Right, and if you could go even further in analytics, I bet you out of that 21 passes he caught, 18 of them were probably for first downs.
Oh boy. If you would have given, I probably could have given you that about 10 seconds ago. I had that split up. That's probably very true. Let me ask you this as we kind of focus a little bit more on your career, because I love to try to pull some of these stories out of you. And this is relevant to the Bills. See, I'm tying everything back to the Bills. I hate to bring this up, but you played in the Music City Miracle, lost to Tennessee.
Yep.
The next year, the Bills opened with the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
And this is not quite unlike what's happening from the Baltimore Ravens perspective. The Baltimore Ravens lost. There's no magical game. Maybe for them, it's the Mark Andrews drop game, the silly Lamar fumble game, the silly Lamar pick game. I'm not sure what Ravens fans are calling it, but it's a silly game that they lost to the Bills. They're opening up against the Buffalo Bills. And I remember that transition as a fan. I'm thinking, we ain't losing this team, not in week one. And y'all didn't lose to that team. What was that like? Was that coming out of that into that, knowing that was your next game? We talk about the Ravens and didn't Lamar Jackson come out and say he's seeking revenge this year? Like, is there some reality to that? Did you guys feel some type of way, or was it just, hey, the next game?
I a little bit of both. I mean, it's hard not to think it, it's some type of way because the media and the fans wouldn't let you think any other way. I mean, it was written about and talked about, but I always laugh at these comments about revenge. We're going to get him back and all that. That's great until the ball is snapped. And I know it's a very, very overplayed quote, but everybody has a game plan until they get punched in the face, right? And it's the same thing. I mean, once that first snap's over with, all the nervousness, all the jitters and everything are gone, and you play football. I believe we played them. I got a really cool picture. I wish I'd have known you were going to talk about this. I'd have shown it to you coming out of the locker room, and somebody took a picture of me from the ground up, and the fireworks are going off over the stadium, and we're getting ready to get introduced. It's one of my favorite pictures. I have it in a poster form. But no, I mean, at that point in time, it was another game. It was another game. But you have to remember too, most of the particulars that were associated with that game, a lot of them weren't there anymore.
Yeah.
They weren't there. Probably one of the worst decisions in the history of the Bills franchise. That Ralph got upset and mad, and because Wade wouldn't get rid of Ronnie, the special teams coach, so they all went. They were all gone, and probably one of the worst decisions the franchise has ever made. Because you know how I feel about Wade. We talked about it last show. But so yeah, that was different too. A lot of the people weren't the same. It was different.
Yeah, that is weird, especially because the hire is Greg Williams, who was on the Tennessee team.
Right.
So that guy's not going to foster the revenge. Like, hey, remember we were part of this? No, dude, you weren't part of this. You were on the other side of it.
Greg came up with something. I mean, yeah, Greg was one of those guys.
Greg Williams came up with something. I'm stunned. I'm stunned to hear that.
Exactly. The head of the snake, the whole 9 yards. I mean, all the stories you hear are 100% true.
What was, if I can ask, like, what was that like, the Flutie Johnson type thing? I mean, you could say as much or as little as you want. I certainly have respect for all angles of that, but like, just generally, was it as divisive as it felt?
Yes.
From the outside looking in? Like, internally, players saw it differently, and
God, it was divisive all the way through the coaching staff and the administration. Remember, when we went to the Music City Miracle, and I will say this about Rob, okay, and everybody wants to, if Doug Flutie would have played, we'd have won the game. When Rob Johnson walked off the field for the last time in that game, we were winning. We were in an unbelievably hostile environment. If you remember, we were down to like our 6th or 7th offensive lineman playing that game. I think Dusty Ziegler was playing tackle at one point. John was hurt. We were all banged up. We found a way, and one of the loudest, the only stadium that's louder than Tennessee at that time, because if you remember, that was new to Nashville, and they were good, and it was rocking and rolling. And Nashville people are front runners, so it was nuts. It was nuts. And we found a way against Javon Curse and the likes, Eddie George, McNair. We found a way when we walked off the field as an offense. Steve Christie put that ball through the end zone, through the uprights. We were winning that game. So it is not fair that Rob gets a lot of flack for that, but Rob, we were winning. Rob's not on kickoff team. Rob wasn't supposed to stay in his lane. Okay. So when we walked off the field, we were winning that game. But no, it was really, really divisive. It's all anybody wanted to talk about. It was irritable. A couple times, and I wasn't proud of it. I got irritated with reporters because you just get sick of hearing it.
Yeah.
And it was a because both guys were both guys were very proud, very, competitive, and those two hooked it up. When I say those two, I mean Rob and Doug. I mean, nobody was given an inch. And but yeah, so you can say what you want. We walked off the field, we were winning the game.
I was in the peak of my young fandom, right, when this was all going down. And I think one of my disappointments on looking back on that team in particular, the 99 Bills, is there are two defenses from that era that are absolutely celebrated. We know about them. They won Super Bowls, the Buccaneers and the Ravens. That 99 Bills defense was 100% on par with those two defense. You can argue with your cat. That was a special group.
No, they were amazing. There was talent all across the board. And again, Teddy Cottrell was the D coordinator. Obviously, Teddy was a Wade guy. It was a Wade defense, and they were hammers, and they got it done. And people talked about it, Joe. I don't know if you remember. The national storyline was whoever won that game. Crazy that it was a wild card game, right?
Yeah, but you knew it. You knew it. Go ahead.
Whoever won that game was going to the Super Bowl, and by God, Tennessee went to the Super Bowl, and they lost by what? A yard and a half.
A yard and a half. Yeah, low scoring game, right? It was the greatest show on turf.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to see it. I want to see that Bills defense against the Rams because I wasn't into the Rams. I thought they were like a cute story, but they didn't play football the way I knew football was supposed to be.
No, they played football how they all play football now.
Right. Right. So at the time it was kind of weird, but I said they ain't played our defense.
Right.
I want to see them play our defense.
Right.
I still want to see it. I still want to see Sam Cowart and Henry Jones and Kurt Schultz and Sam Rogers and Gabe Northern and Ted Washington and Thomas Smith. I want to see these guys, man.
And it's funny because that was the start of it. That game, when we lost that game, and then the new regime comes in, and then guys start unceremoniously getting released. Probably not. You talked about Henry Jones. Talk about not getting treated properly. My goodness. I mean, that guy was a juggernaut of that team for years, deserved much better than he got. John got shuttled off unceremoniously. I mean, there was just a lot of that. And it was the beginning of the end of an unbelievable era of football. And
the start of a horrible one.
Right. And I truly believe that you think about this, and people talk about the 17-year drought and all this. A grown man getting upset with another grown man in a PP contest over a special teams coach is what started that whole thing, in my opinion, because Wade would have still been coaching the Buffalo Bills.
I think there's always a fascinating thing that you can do is you could say if one little thing was different, right? Like one player was picked instead of another player, but like, what if that team stays the course with Wade Phillips? Like, it was terrible. It was the 3-13 the next year with Greg Williams. You felt like it was a directionless situation. It just wasn't. You had a team that had a historically good defense. That I don't know. I still look back at that. I know a lot of people go to like 13 seconds as the missed Bills Super Bowl. I don't think that's wrong. I think that's true. I think the other one that doesn't get enough love because we're further from it was that 99 team. I think it was good enough.
Yeah.
All
no,
right.
I agree. Totally agree.
Well, I feel like we're ending on like an absolute low note.
Yeah, thanks for making me feel depressed. Into the dumps.
Joe. I know. Well,
that's why I tell you live in the past, you're depressed. You live in the future, you're anxious. That's why you got to live in the present, Joe. We got to live in the present.
Well, the good news is I still have lots of questions that I want to ask you about your playing career, and I think you and I are going to be together in a couple of weeks, just the two of us. So I'll have to holster some of that. I need to ask you about the day that Bruce Smith, Andre Reed, and Thurman Thomas were all released on the same day. Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. We'll get to that when we get to that down the road. But this has been a great conversation. Thanks to Greg Tompsett for coming on and talking salary cap. Obviously, a lot of dynamics there. If you showed up late, make sure you go back and watch the first 20 minutes. Greg really gets into the weeds on the Bills cap situation, the second-round pick stuff. We got to James Cook and his status amongst the NFL 100 and the NFL execs, putting him in the top 10. And I think we had some good conversations about fullbacks and run schemes and O-line technique. So we got all kinds of conversations here on today's episode of Bill Squad. Jerry, thanks as always for coming along. The three of us are all back here on Thursday, noon Eastern time, so don't miss that. Thanks for being here, everyone. Go Bills.
Much love. Go Bills.